You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
We're rooting for the Dolphins. I'm mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins. I'm mighty Dolphins.
What's up, Miami Dolphin fans? Welcome to another episode of the Same Old Dolphins Show. I am Aaron the Brain, and I am flying solo this evening as I record. It is 7:47 p.m. on Friday evening, and Josh feeling under the weather, dealing with the flu. It's flu season, especially up there in parts unknown upstate New York. So hopefully Josh will get better and be able to do our next show, where we will be back on video, and this show not going to be on video. So this is an audio only episode of the Same Old Dolphins. And this is going to be, well, this is either the penultimate show, which means next week will be, or not next week, but after this game will be the season recap show, or next week we'll be doing a show breaking down a Dolphins playoff game. So today's show is really, I mean, look, we're going to get into the matchups a little bit and just kind of what the Dolphins need to do. But look, I'm not going to break that down totally. We'll touch on it. I'll make my score predictions because it is the preview show after all for the Dolphins regular season finale against the New York Jets. And I guess at some point that means we should probably sing the song. But before we get there, I want this show to really be about letting go. We need to let go of the expectations that we had for this team coming into the season and midway through the season and going into December. We need to let go of the disappointment that we all feel in the midst of what has really been a monumental collapse by this organization, by this team over the last 5 weeks. And just kind of take things for what they are right now. Because, look, obviously, this is not where we wanted to be coming into the last game of the season, not controlling our own destiny. This is not where we wanted to be, sitting at 500. The definition of mediocrity coming into the last game of the season. But at the end of the day, this is where we're at. And we have to just take where we're at in life, in every situation, and instead of dwelling on the problems, focus on solutions and focus on, as odd as it is to say, the opportunities that are still in front of us and still in front of this team. Because as we go into this game against the Jets at home against Joe Flacco and a Jets team that's banged up, that has starters that aren't even making the trip, that is eliminated from the playoffs, with nothing to play for but pride and a paycheck. This is a game that the Dolphins should win. And I know the last 2 weeks were games that the Dolphins should win, but this even more so is a game that the Dolphins should win. And the Dolphins, amazingly enough, have a ton to play for, because if the Dolphins win this game and the Buffalo Bills beat the New England Patriots, the Miami Dolphins are going to be in the playoffs. and they'll be in the playoffs for the first time since 2016. And we don't know how healthy they're going to be. We don't know if their quarterback, if Tua will be there for that game, if they make it. But they'll have the possibility of playing a playoff game with their starting quarterback, which is something that this organization hasn't had since 2008. Because in 2016, when this team made the playoffs, they went into that game against Pittsburgh knowing that Ryan Tannehill was not going to be able to go and that they were going to have to start it with Matt Moore. Now, that said, if the Dolphins make the playoffs, there's no guarantee that Tua is going to play, and you might be going in with either Skylar Thompson or Teddy Bridgewater, in which case you could pretty much chalk up the chalk up the L, I should say right now. You could chalk up the W for whoever they're facing. So we're going to focus on just this in a vacuum and pretend that these aren't the same old Dolphins and that we're not disappointed where we're at in the season, and just look at this as, hey, if there were no expectations and you make the playoffs and anybody can win, well, the Dolphins have a chance to punch their ticket by winning a game on Sunday, a very, very winnable home game against a team that has been eliminated from the playoffs. Now, things get a little bit dicier for the Dolphins. They got some bad news earlier this week when the NFL came out with their decision that the Monday night game from last Monday with Buffalo versus Cincinnati that was postponed due to the devastating injury from Damar Hamlin. And thankfully, the news has been good regarding Damar Hamlin. He is awake. He is recovering. And that is the best news any football fan has heard all week, bar none. But that said, the NFL did have some bad news regarding the Dolphins, and that was that they decided that that was going to be ruled a no contest. So that game is just not going to exist. And because of that, the Kansas City Chiefs playing on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon at Las Vegas, if they win that game, they will lock up the number 1 seed. And that means that Buffalo and Cincinnati, while both of them will be playing at 1:00 on Sunday, will be playing for nothing more than seeding, provided that Kansas City wins that game. Now, if Kansas City loses that game, then both Buffalo and Cincinnati then are playing for home field advantage and the bye, I believe. Let me just double check this. I guess Cincinnati Cincinnati cannot get the bye because of having that no contest. So Cincinnati will, if Kansas City wins that game against the Raiders, then Cincinnati cannot get the bye. And even if Kansas City loses that game against the Raiders, Cincinnati cannot get the bye. So Cincinnati is basically in a spot where they only are the 2 or 3 seeds. So we don't know if they're going to play for anything. Therefore, we don't know if Buffalo is going to play for anything. It might be a situation where they go into the game preparing to play to win, and the coach just keeps an eye on the scoreboard and at some point may ultimately pull the starters. We don't really know how that's going to play out, but what we do know is that if Kansas City wins that game, then they have significantly less to play for, and that means that the odds of New England beating Buffalo obviously are significantly increased in that scenario. And obviously for the Dolphins to make the playoffs, they're going to need the Patriots to lose that game. So we're going to need some help from Buffalo. But if Buffalo can win that game, this is again, look, it's a Jets team that's just as cold as the Dolphins, except now that a Jets team that literally has nothing to play for and is starting their backup quarterback, looks like a team that's playing out the string. This is a team that hasn't even really been competitive the last few weeks during their losing streak, while the Dolphins, at the very least have been playing close games and falling short. The last 2 weeks, the Jets have lost to Jacksonville and Seattle, fringe playoff teams in their own right, by a combined score of 42-19. This is a Jets team that has the look of one that's just done. They overachieved early in the season. Teams have figured them out. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to figure out, but they've gotten poor quarterback play, whether it's Zach Wilson or Mike White. Joe Flacco statistically has been their best quarterback, but he did all of his damage early in the season, mostly in garbage time. So it's not like Joe Flacco was setting the world on fire. Now, that said, it would be it's very Dolphins to have, this kind of game and the Jets coming into town, and because of injuries, they play their third string quarterback, and their third string quarterback just happens to be statistically their best quarterback. So that statistically would make it the toughest matchup. But let's be real here. If you can't beat an injured, reeling, eliminated from the playoffs team coming to your house in the last game of the season when you have the playoffs on the line and they do not, if you can't win that game, not only do you not deserve to make the playoffs, but nobody in that coaching staff and front office deserves to have a job. You've got to win this game. Now, if you win the game and the Patriots beat the Bills and you don't make the playoffs, okay. And we'll have a show afterwards, and then we'll have the whole off season to discuss jobs and how this team moves forward. But you got to win this football game. And I don't care how you do it. To me, it seems pretty clear. You've got Skylar Thompson at quarterback. You may or may not have Teddy Bridgewater. If you do, I doubt that he'll be 100%. If it's not Teddy Bridgewater as your backup, you're going to have Mike Glennon, who's only been in the room for a few days. And he's Mike Glennon. So conventional wisdom would tell you, you need to run the football. You need to not have this game be decided by Skylar Thompson. Skylar Thompson needs to be a game manager. And you need to be able to rely on your defense to shut down Joe Flacco and a Jets offense that is one of the worst offenses in the league, and has put up a total of 9 points in their last 2 games, and hasn't scored 20 points since losing 27-22 against the Minnesota Vikings on December 4th. And before that, hadn't scored, well, I guess they had scored 31 against the Bears, but by and large, over the course of the season, this team has struggled to score 20 points basically all year long. Since week 6, so starting in week 7, October 23rd at Denver, these are the Jets' point totals. 16 points in a win against Denver. 17 points in a loss against New England. 20 points in their win against Buffalo. 3 points in a loss against New England. Then they had their 31-point game against Chicago. Then 22 points in a loss against Minnesota. 12 points in a loss against Buffalo. 17 against Detroit. 3 against Jacksonville. 6 against Seattle. This team can't score. The Dolphins' defense has given up a lot of points, but they're not bereft of talent. And we got some good news on the injury report. I mean, generally the news on the injury report has been bad. It doesn't look like Teron Armstead is going to play. He's listed as doubtful. But even though they're listed as questionable, they went from Bradley Chubb and Xavier Howard both went from not practicing to practicing on a limited basis on Friday. And that upward trend would lead me to believe that they're going to play. So you've got Xavier Howard. You've got Javon Holland. You've got Bradley Chubb, Christian Wilkins, Jalen Phillips. You've got enough guys on that defense to where you should be able to hold the Jets under 20. And I don't care who the quarterback is. When you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on your offense, you should be able to score 20 points in your sleep. I know it's not always that easy, and I know the Jets defense is legit. But you just need decent quarterback play. You just need replacement level quarterback play and some semblance of a running game. And you should be able to put up 20 points. And if you put up 20 points, you should win this game. So I don't want to get too much into the matchups here because at the end of the day, this isn't going to be a game that's won and lost by matchups. This is going to be a game where we find out if the Dolphins have any heart whatsoever. Because to lose this game is a total quit job. No team with even a modicum of talent, that's even a playoff contender, should lose this football game given the circumstances. And I say that even going in with my third string quarterback. The Dolphins have a distinct talent advantage. They have a distinct intangible advantage when it comes to what they're playing for versus what the opponent is playing for. You get the game at home. Just win the damn game. However you got to do it. So I know we didn't break down a lot. And I know right now everybody's down on this team. And you should be down on this team. I'm not going to tell you how to fan. And if you're not down on this team, kudos to you for your rosy outlook. And if you're super down on this team, I get it. I'm right there with you. But you still have to take things for what they are. This is an 8-8 football team that has a chance to win a game, to go 9-8, to finish the season with a winning record for the third time in a row, which probably hasn't happened since Jay Fiedler was here. And more importantly, has a chance to make the playoffs. And if they make the playoffs and you are a believer in anybody can win on any given Sunday, and you believed coming into the season that the benchmark for a successful season for this Miami Dolphins football team was to win a playoff game, well, if you win this game on Sunday and you get just a little bit of help, you still might have a chance to achieve that goal. As crazy, as ridiculous as it sounds. So, without further ado, fuck the Jets, fuck the Jets, fuck the fucking Jets, fuck the Jets, fuck the Jets, fuck the fucking Jets, fuck the Jets, fuck the Jets, fuck the fucking Jets, fuck the Jets, fuck the Jets, fuck the Jets, fuck the Jets, go Dolphins, take care of take care of yourselves and each other, go Dolphins.